Anishinaabe Three Fires Confederacy of Ojibwe, Ottawa, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples. In particular, the university resides on land ceded in the 1819 Treaty of Saginaw. We recognize, support, and advocate for the sovereignty of Michigan's 12 federally recognized Indian nations, for historic indigenous communities in Michigan, for indigenous individuals and communities who live here now, and for those who were forcibly removed from their homelands. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm indigenous sovereignty and will work to hold Michigan State University more accountable to the needs of American Indian and indigenous peoples. Good evening, I am Lori Hollinger, and I'm here to welcome you to this evening of poetry with Leila Chatti. Before we get rolling, I'd like to thank our interim dean of the Residential College in the Arts and Humanities, Glenn Chambers, for his support of tonight's program. I would also like to extend my gratitude to Dr. Beth Alexander, who has also supported this program. In addition, I extend my thanks to Marcus Fields, who manages all things tech and theater here at RCAH, Madge Bice in the sound booth for her technical assistance tonight, Steve Byback, preparator of the Lookout Gallery, for preparing and opening the space to our events. Thank you as well to our stellar staff of student interns, Julius Paddo, Maddie Stark, Dominic Stoops, and Joe Troxel for their work in promoting, planning, and carrying out today's events, as well as our staff of student Wheelbarrow Books reviewers, Amaya Aten, Lillian Kaster, and Annalise Krawcheck for their ongoing work this semester. A warm thanks and welcome as well to Scott Harris of Everybody Reads for being on hand this evening to offer Leila's books for sale. Tonight is our last visiting poet event for the semester, but be sure and sign up and keep an eye out for our newsletter for info on the vast offerings of poetry here and in the community. We also have a few letterpress broadsides of one of Leila's poems from her 2018 appearance here. You'll find those and other useful information on the table and back. Tonight's program will include the poetry reading with Leila, followed by some Q&A. Then we hope you'll join us upstairs in the Lookout Gallery for a reception and book signing immediately following this reading. I'd now like to turn this mic over to someone who needs no introduction, really, but without whom we wouldn't be celebrating poetry here at RCAH the way we do. RCAH Professor Emerita Anita Skeen is the founding director of the Center for Poetry, and even in what she calls retirement, continues to wear a vast array of hats, including being series editor for our publishing imprint, also her brainchild, Wheelbarrow Books, board member of the Friends of Theater Rutgers up in Saginaw, and coordinator of the Creative Arts Program at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico, among others. She's the author of 6 volumes of poetry, with yet another coming out this spring, and mentor to countless poets and writers, including tonight's guest. Friends, please help me welcome Anita Skeen.
Like Leila, I seem to keep coming back. I don't know. Let me get a little light here. If I were to introduce Leila Chatti tonight by telling you all that she has accomplished, all of her publications, all of her awards, including the one we will be celebrating tomorrow night at the Wharton Center, the MSU 2023 Young Alumni Award, her grants and residencies, and all of her academic and community-based positions, I would have time to say nothing else. You can read about those on the Poetry Center website at poets.org and at many other sites on the internet. Instead, I want to tell you about Leila, about her connection to poetry, I never learned how to do this. Let me say, instead I want to tell you about Leila, about her connection to poetry, about how since she appeared in my RCAH 492 senior seminar on the cultural meanings of poems some years ago, I have followed her work and her writing. How excited I was for all of us when she was named one of the 20 most promising young poets in America by Tracy K. Smith, then Poet Laureate of the United States, who I have to say was a visitor to the Center for Poetry before she became Poet Laureate. And how Leila's trajectory reminds me of another of MSU's most famous literary lights, Carolyn Forshé, a great friend and visitor to ARCA, who is the youngest poet ever to have won the prestigious Yale Younger Poets Prize for poets under the age of 40. Carolyn is most recognized for her poetry of witness, a poetry invested in the social, which has an amazing, Carolyn is most recognized for her poetry of witness, a poetry invested in the social, which has an amazing ability to wed the personal and the political, the traumatic events of history to individual awareness. In 2020, Leila's first book, Deluge, from Copper Canyon Press, did the same and earned widespread praise for its candid storytelling and vivid language. Quote, "The idea of disease as punishment drives this collection's themes of shame, illness, grief, and gender, transmuting religious narrative through the lens of a young Arab-American woman suffering a taboo female affliction." Unquote. The New York Times called the collection a bracing accomplishment, while Publishers Weekly labeled it an unflinching debut that translates a gritty, traumatizing experience into a hypnotic, transcendental topography of the human spirit. Unfortunately, we are living in a time in this country and the world where language is abused, commodified, misconstrued, and denigrated. Language surrounds us every day, on television, on the radio, on social media, on billboards, and in texts that squawk by us like migrating geese. We need poetry and exceptional poets, of which Leila is one. And she reminds us that language has beauty, can contain great truths, and most of all, makes us attentive to life around us. In her poem, I Went Out to Hear, Leila writes, after going out into the sound of quiet, "On the surface of the black lake, a swan and the moon stayed perfectly still. I knew this was a perfect moment, which would only hurt me to remember and never live again. My God, how lucky to have lived a life I would die for." When Leila was a senior here at MSU, she asked me if I would be the director of her undergraduate honors thesis, and I was delighted to have the chance to work with Leila one-on-one. We met weekly during the spring semester of 2011, set up a schedule for the readings she would do, the number of poems she would write each week, and more importantly, the number of revisions she would do each week, and worked toward discovering the best way of organizing and presenting her collection of poems. By the time she had finished, many of the poems she had written were publishable. What impressed me so much about Leila in these meetings and in my semester working with her was the joy she brought to the writing process and the way she was able to reach back into her own experience and translate what had happened to her into a universal context. Revision was not something she dreaded, but something she looked forward to, and she did it instantly. She has rich and powerful material in her background to work with. She knows how to mine it, not for the exotic or the sensational, but for the way in which her experience, however different and interesting for the reader, can be emblematic for all of us. I had no doubt that one day Leila Chatti would be a name we associate with significant publication and prizes in the world of poetry. Poetry slows us down. Poetry reminds us of our humanity, that we are a collective people with shared experiences, dreams, loves, and losses. In poetry, words are not weapons. They are windows into our lives. In 2018, the National Endowment for the Arts reported that in a survey they undertook, the number of adults who read poetry nearly doubled in 5 years, marking the highest number on record for the last 15 years. And then we had COVID, when poetry reading increased exponentially. We are lucky tonight to have with us Leila Chatti in the flesh and in the word to share with us her experiences. In her commentary on the poem, The Rules, Leila says, "I began this poem as a genuine attempt to follow the rules I had internalized, but as I wrote the poem, I was interrupted by a strong urge to instead write about something that broke them. I wanted to write about the walk I took the prior night in Madison, Wisconsin, and the brief, vital moment of joy that indicated my year-long depression might finally lift. I knew this risked sentimentality, earnestness, and vulnerability, things I had been told to guard against, but I was tired of the rules. I wanted to write the real thing, even if it wasn't the right thing. So I did." Please welcome Leila Chatti.
It's still exciting for me to be up here because I remember being 18 and listening to people much wiser than me. Some of them in corn costumes or things like that. Be up here, so it's still very fun. I'm so happy to be here. Some of you might know this is my hometown. I'm from East Lansing, as is my husband. So we're happy to be home. So thank you for spending this night with us. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, the RCAH, for having me here. So happy. I'm going to start with reading from my first full-length book, Deluge, and read a little bit of some other things, too. Okay, checking time. There's not much you need to know about the first book. Mostly just it's about an illness that first started to show up in my early 20s. And sort of my grappling with faith in the face of that. And the first poem is called Confession, and it has an epigraph from when Mary is giving birth to Jesus in the Quran. And what she says is, "Oh, I wish I had died before this and was in oblivion, forgotten." Confession. Truth be told, I like Mary a little better when I imagine her like this, crouched and cursing, a boy god pushing on her cervix. I like remembering she had a cervix, her body ordinary, and so like mine. Girl sweat lacing rivulets like veins in the sand, her small hands on her knees, not doves, but hands, gripping, a palm pressed to her spine, fronds whispering like voyeurs of her head. Oh, Mary. Like a god, I too take pleasure in knowing you were not all holy, that ache could undo you, like a knot. And suffering, I admire this girl who cared for a moment not about God or his plans, but her own distinct life. This fearsome Mary who disappeared if it saved her, who'd howl to hell with salvation if it meant this pain. The blessed adolescent who squatted indignant in a desert, bearing his child like a secret she never wanted to hear. Mary speaks. And what could I say when he entered, rude as a dream, bare flame of a man with wings and demands not his own? I'd been raised a good girl to house my tongue in my mouth, to be hospitable towards strangers, suspicious of no one. Perhaps I'd have been better off to be wary, but I'd been waiting so long to hear God speak, I hadn't thought to think of what he might tell me. Sarcoma. When the doctor says the word sarcoma, I consider how it might be a nice name for a daughter, that good feminine A. The way parents name their children for all sorts of inappropriate things. Apples, for instance, or the place where the baby was conceived. And I trace my fingers over the barrow of my belly as he speaks, flesh distended beneath blue tissue I wear for a dress, an ideal grief frock, throwaway. And he says something about life expectancy, but of course I expect my life. So plain I thought nothing would ever take it. And while he explains, I cut my palms around my center, as if comforting a child, or covering her ears. Litany while reading scripture in the gynecologic oncology waiting room. And God said, let there be blood. And God said, flood. And God said, good is a woman with fruit in her womb and not in her hand. And God said, sin. And God did not say, forgive. And God said, I will make a stormy wind. And God said, sun, a breath, stirring. And God said, highly favored. And God said, condemned. And God said, I will blot out man whom I have created, for I am sorry that I have made them. And God said, listen, and sank a boy in her like a stone. Mother, if you had asked me, 13, what I wanted to be one day, I wouldn't have said it. I wanted, for a long time, to be anything but myself, knew that a soon-to-be woman was the second worst thing in the world after a woman, full stop, and I was heading there fast. I could see it, my breasts rudely nudging into view, their snug caps like the knit caps of infants, rosy-colored as a tongue. And how terrifying, the thought of a mouth there, brooding, and what could be drawn from me that I didn't need. What else skulked in me unseen, stirring in secret vats with milk yet untapped, and blood, the strange new wellspring. I was just beginning to understand the possibilities, my body's elusive, independent workings, machineries chugging away in dark chambers, not just left to, but simply their own devices, unknowable and sovereign. What I wanted always to be in control. And I knew this was impossible, just as I knew, even then, that to be a mother was to be the only permissible form of a woman, the begrudging exception to the rule of our worthlessness. So if you ask me again, 23, I tell you the worst thing you could be is not a woman, but barren, the industry shut down, and the parts missing, malformed. And I tell you the shame of it, the feminine failure, its ache, a reminder, at the center, the tumor, ballooning, like hope. Angel. After a month of asking, suddenly, a voice. It says, you deserve that, which has happened to you. It says, I see what you do with your long, to-read hands. Maundering through the banalities of my life, it follows, speaking, as if from a frosty bag of peas in the freezer aisle, speaking while I am on my knees, scrubbing the bathroom floor, trying to love a man. Its speech is disquieting company, but company nonetheless. A TV left on and turned low. It desperately wants my attention, but is polite, which is its defining weakness. Sometimes I catch it stirring out of the corner of my eye, a glint at the end of my cat's whiskers, a spangle on the ceiling of indiscernible source. More often, though, it looks like me, only a little off, like my reflection in the pregnant belly of a spoon. In fact, when I speak to it, I use my own name. I'm not sure if it minds. It repeats instead its refrain. It says, God has plans for you. It says, I didn't say they were good. Move to the end, and then I think I'm going to switch soon. So I'll read two from that. This is called Annunciation. All night I leak a shadow from the place I first learned shame. All night the milky curve of the moon pressed to the window like an ear. God, I know you are there. You are everywhere. And yet you fixed her in a shaft of light and sent a man who would not touch her, frightened though she was. You were there in the room as you are here in the room, in the dark through which I beseech you. The man beside me slumbers messageless, unwinged. All night I listen, for you listen. If there is something you need to tell me, God, you must tell it to me yourself. And this last poem is called Exegesis. I bled. God didn't want to hear about it. He said unclean, and so it was. He said it is harm, and so it was. Want to hear about it? He said unclean. Once a woman wanted, so he did her harm. And so it was first conceived. A woman suffering because a woman wanted. So he said, cursed. And then he said, blessed. The woman chose to suffer, conceived a God, though she never knew a man. And God knows best. If he calls a curse a blessing, then so it is. And he said she was clean. She never knew a man. I've known men, but never a God that bled and lived. But I did. I'm going to switch real quick to, I think, just one poem from this chapbook. I wrote it with one of my teachers, Dorian Lux, who's a wonderful person and poet. It's called The Mothers. And I'm going to read a poem about Eastwood Town Center, since I'm home. Eastwood. Because it's June and there's nothing to do, we go to the strip mall at the edge of town. Someone's mother drives us. It isn't mine. These girls, they've got hair blaring red as a siren, no curfews, boyfriends and rumors of going all the way. I'm 14 and buttoned up in a blouse, bespectacled, a little shy, but last summer I tried to dye, which makes me interesting. We loiter in the moist heat of the parking lot, calling lewd things to strangers across the relucent sea of asphalt, laughing with our whole mouths. Every part of us gleams, our lipped fingers sticky from free crispy creams, our lips glossed, cheek cherry. We're not that beautiful, but we're young, which to men we're old enough to know is close. We stare them down, perched on the curb. We bare our thighs like secrets that have hurt us. Sitting there, impatient, one girl might kiss suddenly another, giggling, shadows merging on the pitted sidewalk, eyes open to see if they're seen. And at the very least, there's me, ever the apprentice in tenderness and nerve. When a man eventually, inevitably approaches, we rise as birds do, all at once, flushed and shrieking until we regroup out of reach, our bodies heaving against each other as if we have narrowly escaped a fate we know to fear, but can't name. Then we do it again, to be sure. When the sun swells before the sky's mantling like a rosy bubble, we wander snapping hubba-bubba as the streetlights pop on above us, proffer wishes and gossip like they're makeshift stars. We wait for someone to wonder where we are, find ourselves waiting long into the dark. I think we like this part best, the night falling over our shoulders like a borrowed sweatshirt, still warm, the blonde grasses whispering as we circle and circle the unclaimed lot, knowing that we could be forgotten, but are not. And if we listen hard before someone comes for us, some nights our names are called between guitar riffs and the classic rock station, blaring from rusted cars and the bar patio across the street. Songs we know by heart. Songs our fathers once sang to our mothers before they were ours or anyone's. Ballads that made them believe it was possible, they could, a lifetime, love, be loved, desperately, like that. I'm gonna read some, as people say, new shit. Because I'm well aware that a lot of the stuff is downer, so I tried to pick some like non-downers to end on for you all. It's a new chapter. But I will start with one that's a little older. It's called The Rules, which Anita talked about. The rules. There will be no more stars. The poem has had enough of them. I think we can agree. We no longer believe there is anyone in any poem who is just now realizing they are dead, so let's stop talking about it. The skies of this poem are teeming with winged things and not a single innominate bird. You're welcome. Here, no monarchs, no moths, no cicadas doing whatever they do in the trees. If this poem is in summer, punctuating the blue, forgive me, I forgot there's no blue in this poem. You'll find the occasional palisanid wasp, proposals vaporized and exorbitant, angels looking as they should. If winter, unsentimental sleet. This poem does not take place at dawn or dusk or noon or the witching hour or the crescendoing moment of our own remarkable birth. It is 2:53 in this poem, a Tuesday, and everyone in it is still at work. This poem has no children. It is trying to be taken seriously. This poem has no shards, no kittens, no mids or fairy tales, no pomegranates or rainbows, no ex-boyfriends or manifest lovers, no mothers, God, no mothers, no God, about which the poem must admit it's relieved. There's no heart in this poem, no bodily secretions, no body referred to as the body. No one dies or is dead in this poem. Everyone in this poem is alive and pretty okay with it. This poem will not use the word beautiful, for it resists calling a thing what it is. So what if I'd like to tell you how I walked last night, glad, truly glad, for the first time in a year, to be breathing in the cold dark, to see them. The stars, I mean. Oh hell, before something stops me, I nearly wept on the sidewalk at the sight of them all. This one's for my dad. He's in the civil engineering department at Michigan State, so go green. And this poem is called Pothole Ode. I am determined to praise my particular world, so I must praise you. Midwestern blemish, you pock and rift, you riddle Michigan moonscape after each winter. If pressed to admire, I admit I'm impressed by your perseverance, how you resist all efforts toward mending, how you insist rupture the point. I imagine it might make it easier to simply accept you as an innate feature of the landscape. Faultless and endearing as our eroded shores, late snows, shaws of residual ferruginous trees. Come May, its rains, across the state you fill and spill over. You glimmer in insufficient sun, a surfeit of many man-made inglorious lakes. Once, it's true, I liked you, without irony or convincing, a child on a cul-de-sac, plumbing gladly your clouded depths in rubber boots. Before I was responsible for a vehicle's care and course, I liked too, from the back seat, the surprise swerve around you, sliding dramatically into my siblings, the delight of a slipped curse from my mother as she slaloomed on her way to school. Oh, asphalt oculus, highway lacuna, hollow of the road most traveled, you stippled the thoroughfare between my past and after, you a fact of passage, obstacle that demands attention, the most basic act of love. And I realize now, I must thank you, perpetual predicament of pavement, for your endurance employed my father, provided our livelihood. I understand for the first time, if I am to praise anything, I must praise you first. One who led my father to this country, to my mother, bituminous nuisance, which engendered my life. This poem I'm going to end on, which is a poem. It's an abecedarian, so it follows the alphabet. And I wrote it during the fall of 2020, in which I was writing a lot of abecedarians. It's one of my upcoming projects, involves a lot of them. But at this time I was feeling very lonely, like so many of us were. And I started typing the beginnings of questions or things I was thinking about into Google. And you know how it shows up with those autofill responses, right? And so I was starting to do that, and I was like, these are so weird. And so I decided, I was like, what happens if I try to write a bunch of starts following the alphabet? And what ended up happening was sort of a collection of our collective consciousness and anxieties. So this is a poem, I think, of great loneliness, but also of great connection. It's called Google, and it's made entirely of those Google results. You'll probably catch soon the little chunks and how it works. Are we going to get another stimulus check? Are we going to get a second stimulus? Are we going back to school? Are we going to have Halloween this year? Are we going to have a bad winter? Are we going to get a stimulus check this month? But where is Chuck Norris? But where? But where were they going without ever knowing the way? But where are you really from? But where in Spanish? But where are you? But where is your heart? But where's the lie? Could you be loved? Could you not? Could you repeat that? Could you please? Does it snow in Australia? Does it snow in Texas? Does it snow in North Carolina? Does it snow in Tennessee? Does it snow in Seattle? Does it snow in California? Does it rain diamonds on Saturn? Does it snow in Japan? Everyone is here. Everyone is doing great. Everyone is John. Everyone is, or everyone are. Everyone is now dumber. Freaked out about COVID. Freaked out about being pregnant. Freaked out about feeling baby move. Freaked out about giving birth. Freaked out about having a baby. Freaked out about SIDS. Freaked out about dying. Freaked out about being alive. God, what should I do? God, what do you want from me? God, what is wrong with me? God, what am I doing wrong? God, what are you doing? God, what is going on? God, what did I do to deserve this? How to protect hydrangea from deer? How to protect chickens from hawks? How to protect mums from frost? If I could turn back time, if I could save time in a bottle, If I could write you a song, if I could fall into the sky, if I could, then I would. Joke about 2020. Joke about God sending help. Keep calm and carry on. Keep calm and carry on. Keep calm and mask on. Keep calm and wash your hands. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is blind, season 2. Love is war. Love is an open door. Maybe this is as good as it gets. Maybe this is how it starts. Maybe this is how it ends. Maybe this is who we are. Maybe this is the coldest winter. No, I will not have a nice day. No, I will not in Spanish. No, I will not in German. No, I will not fix your computer. No, I will not read your script. I love people. No, I will not make out with you. No, I will not elaborate. No, I will not. Ordinary things cut in half. Ordinary things under a microscope. Ordinary things in an extraordinary way. Please, I need help. Please, I need health care. Please, I just want to die. Quiet, I can feel it. Quiet, I bear within me. Quiet, I can't hear the eggs. Recently, I have been sleeping a lot. Recently, I have been peeing a lot. Recently, I sweat a lot. Recently, I haven't been hungry. Recently, recently I was. Sometimes I don't want to be happy. Sometimes I give myself the creeps. Sometimes I run, sometimes I hide. Sometimes I cry. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I just want to be lonely. The truth is out there. The truth is like a lion. The truth is a cave in the Black Mountains. The truth is the game is rigged from the start. Useless facts. Useless information. Very close to home. Very close by. Very close to my heart. Very close veins. People are great. These are all real. I haven't changed any of them. So. Worrying is a sin. Worrying is a waste of time. Worrying is like walking around with an umbrella. Worrying is like paying a debt. Worrying is suffering twice. Worrying is like praying. Exactly what is fracking? Exactly what is Facebook? Exactly what is socialism? Exactly what is COVID-19? Exactly what is time? Exactly what I was looking for? Exactly what it says on the tin. You could be mine. You could have had a bad witch. You could say what you like. You could, in Spanish, you could make a religion out of this. 0 likes on Tinder, 0 likes on Hinge, 0 likes on Instagram, 0 like the wind. Thank you.
So if we could bring the house lights up, I'd like to open the floor up for questions for Leila.
Can I just comment, Leila, because that last one,
Yeah.
the first time I read it, that is so fun. I'm going to try to do it. You made it look easy. It was not easy. Your prompts were wonderful, and it made this beautiful. I don't have to repeat all that, do I? I tried to do the ABCDarian Google after reading Leila's, and it's not on. And it's hard. It was nothing like the beautiful poem that she wrote. Those prompts were inspired.
Yeah, that poem was so interesting to me just because, you know, it was like I was seeing into the minds of millions of people. You know, it's like, where else do you turn to if not Google when you have these wild thoughts or questions? And I love just the mishmash, the kind of, you know, wildness of some very big questions alongside, you know, Googling song lyrics. It was great. It made me feel so much love for my fellow Americans in a time that was really fraught, and also so much less lonely. So yeah, that was a fun poem to write. It's also one that wouldn't be the same now. It had to be exactly at that moment. You know, the algorithm changes. So, and I'm sure it wouldn't have been the same poem if you all had typed in the same thing either. So it's kind of interesting.